Welcome to Off the Cuff with Curl Conversations from the Frontline, where we empower survivors' voices and challenge the status quo. I am your host, Kelly Humphreys, survivor, advocate, author, speaker, researcher, ambassador, and a seasoned former first responder. Supported by the team at Media 8, Off the Cuff with Kel is about growth and healing, leadership through trauma, awareness, and understanding. We bring you compelling stories of courage, transformation, and expert insights, along with candid discussions on the challenges victims and survivors face. Off the Cuff with Kel celebrates our shared humanity, blending deep vulnerability with humor. Each episode is crafted with love, honesty, and the emotions that bind us, whether it's laughter or tears, promoting resilience and hope. Please note, some of the discussions we have can be hard to hear and include sexual abuse themes, online exploitation, domestic and family violence, and trauma. So, listener discretion is advised. Please join us as we change the world one story at a time, embracing courage through vulnerability. All right, guys, welcome to number 30. Yes, we've made it to 30 episodes of Off the Cuff with Kel. Very excited to be here tonight. I've got the amazing Lynn Swanson-Kennedy from Collective Shout. Welcome.
Thanks.
Thank you for being here.
It's really great to be here. What a privilege. I know that I've followed the footsteps of some very big footsteps, so I do really feel under the pump, but very privileged. Thank you.
Well, Collective Shout has been very gracious in lending Melinda, the co-founder, CEO, and we had Caitlin last week on sex dolls, and I forgot the name of it. She's written an amazing book, and now we have Lynn Swanson-Kennedy. And tonight we're going to be talking about a culture of Kidfluencers, having a bit of reality check on something that I'm actually not all across. And as I was kind of doing a little, yes, I did do some work, and I was off the cuff. So that means I don't actually like to have a script. I like to be a little bit surprised, sometimes a little bit scared. And sometimes when I read about it, I'm like, shit, this is going to be a really fucking hard conversation. And I'm like, I pull in all the people and I'm like, okay, guys, I might screw up and we might need chocolate after this.
Yes. It's the answer to a lot of things, isn't it?
Yeah, 100%. So guys, if you're out there tonight, just be warned, there might be some things that we'll talk about that could be a little bit triggering. We won't use that. Cover up my head. Yeah, so please just be mindful. There's some phone numbers on my website at kellyhumphreys.com if you are struggling with any of the content. But I am going to hand over to Lynn very shortly. So Lynn is a campaigner, and I'm going to give you this title. She's the strategic advisor at Collective Shout for their campaigns. They've got amazing campaigns, and trying to tackle, well, particularly Lynn. She said she's the CEO crusher, so she takes on all these CEOs in the finance industry, those who are funding or utilizing their services to, I guess, enable child sexual abuse to occur through their finance platforms. I want to get that right. So she's a researcher, advocate, and she's mum. So she's got lots of insight, and she's done a lot of work in this Kidfluencer space. And she was on Four Corners just recently, being interviewed in relation to the epidemic that is what I see it as, because I'm old and not as old as you, Lynn, but I shouldn't say that, right? You're only a little bit older than me.
Older, yes, that's okay.
But I was thinking about this, and I was like, gosh, the online space has changed so quickly. But I look at this and I think of those early 90s movies with beauty pageants and beauty queens and all the fluff and stuff that goes on around and the hype. And I kind of liken this to the online maybe world of that. That's kind of what I'm kind of thinking of. Yeah. So I'd love you to give us the scope and tell us a little bit about kind of how wrong I am.
No, well, you're absolutely on track. And I would say that what we document and witness today on mainstream social media is an evolution of what started as that pageantry And that's still very popular in the United States. I am very grateful that in Australia, it's never really taken off. And Collective Shout has been part of a resistance movement early on, resisting the promotion and popularity of beauty pageants, children's beauty pageants, particularly here in this country. And so I'd like to think that Collective Shout had a part of, that not ever really taking off here. But kidfluencing, absolutely. It's an extension of that. We see these child models that are presented in the public space. They're essentially given a global platform to promote products and brands and services. And they are connected with a global network of people who follow them, who can see them, who can engage with them. And it's a very disturbing trend, and it seems only to be getting bigger.
Yeah, well, I think before we had this, I had a bit of a Google, and I was a little bit, I was thinking I should, change jobs or something, because some of these kids are earning millions. I thought, oh my God, like, how is a child supposed to, I guess, deal with that kind of lifestyle as such a young person, and the exploitation of labor? That's something that I'm seeing. It takes me a really long time to do like one reel.
Yeah.
Imagine these kids, like, it's their life, it's what they do. And so the majority of these kids are really underage, like, so they're under the age of 13. And most of them are not supposed to own a social media account. So
Correct.
there's this parental perpetration in a way, or exploitation of these kids on these platforms. And to me, that's really concerning, because I look at that and I go, well, what are we setting them up for?
Yeah, absolutely. It takes a lot of adults who should be protecting these children to either be turning a blind eye to the realities of the harms that are occurring, or to be knowingly participating and complicit in the harms. For all of this to take place. And parents certainly play a big part in this. I think we are well beyond the stage of any parent being able to claim that they don't know about these real risks of exploitation that happen when they present their children in the online space. So we are well beyond that. I think early on, perhaps a parent could say, well, I'm just, doing this fun thing online, and they really enjoy it, and we don't see anything bad, therefore it's not happening. But I think we've gone well past that. The harms are widely documented, just the risks of exploitation. On mainstream social media platforms, you can see, I follow nearly 2,000 underage girls on Instagram, and most of these are under 13. And when we keep in mind, as you said before, that under the age of 13, technically they're not supposed to have a social media account, but we have all these so-called parent-run accounts, and that's how these young girls that I follow are allowed to have these accounts. But often they're unsupervised. They're doing their little dances. They're doing live, essentially, performances for an unscrutinized public audience of largely men who are situated around the world. And so you can see the commentary that comes in. You can see the men engaging with the comments. You can with the girls. You can see sexualized comments that they're making. And so there's no pretense around this about what is actually going on and how these girls are being exploited in plain sight.
Yeah, I think that was something that was going to be my next thing. I was like, oh, I think for many people, they just look at this and they're like just scrolling through social media and not really kind of contextualizing what the actual issue is. They're like, oh, it's just a kid doing a dance, but when something, I mean, obviously I'm very aware as a survivor myself, around some of the risks that are posed when we're putting this content online. And I don't think maybe people understand, well, they don't take the time to actually, I think, internalize what's going on past the 4-second scroll. Like,
Yes.
and I think something that they're kind of missing is that there's always this extra content. So when you get those subscriptions and stuff like that, because I don't know a lot about that stuff, I probably should, but maybe I need to start my own like little subscription channel. I don't know. But yeah, like, these kids have these subscription channels where they put all this extra material. So
Yeah.
these people who are subscribing, like, who's going to be subscribing to content of a child if not perpetrators, right?
Exactly. 100%. Number one, who has the money? It's not the
Like
girl,
kids.
who can afford to sponsor all their peers in these Instagram subscriptions. It's men, it's adults who want this. And I think viewers might be interested to, or it might be good to remind them that this is not new. There's a very interesting case that dates back to the mid 2000s, and it involves a website called WeeBeWeb, or a company called WeeBeWeb. And this was a so-called child modeling website. So from very early internet days, and it operated from 1999 to 2005. And it was a subscription-based website. It was frequented by men. The customers were men, and young girls aged 7 to 16 were invited to come and essentially start accounts on that and provide subscription-based content for these paying viewers. And viewers will be happy to know that the co-founders of that company, WeeBeWeb, were indicted and jailed for child exploitation crimes, and also a photographer who was connected to them. And however, so this is 2000 and up to 2005, this was happening. We are witnessing exactly the same things happening today. The thing is, now it happens in plain sight on the platforms that we all know and love and use on a daily basis. And so that is the difference there. We're all on this platform.
Yeah, and I think too, like, it's just like kind of like you see what is on the front, but then what's going on in the background. And so obviously I work now in the artificial intelligence for law enforcement community safety lab as a researcher. So part of our work is combating basically online child exploitation material.
Yeah.
And some of the things that I think actually was on the Four Corners episode that you were on, that we're talking about, and obviously very aware through the work that we're doing, is the nature of these online chat forums where perpetrators exist. There's chat between each of them, and having these I guess like fan clubs of some of these child influencers. So I think we could be talking about this and say, what's the real issue? It's the stuff that goes on and the risk that is posed, not only to a child's mental health, but these perpetrators are really preying on these young people in a way that makes them really vulnerable. And I don't remember the young lady's name, but you were talking, it was on Four Corners, that they don't let her go to the shops by herself. She doesn't catch the bus by herself. She has to be driven to school. Like, all these things, can't go in public on her own. And this is because these forums are dedicated to each of these child influencers and have hundreds and hundreds of men talking about what they want to do to this child. And to be really blunt, it's about raping that child, about killing that child, about torturing that child, about ejaculating on their photographs. Like, it's brutal. This is the stuff that's going on. And I think that we need to say it, because otherwise it's kind of like, oh, that's a pretty little girl. It's a beauty pageant, right? We're not looking at the stuff that's going on underneath it, because either we don't want to know, or it's not going to happen to my kid, or I'm all over the social media as a parent, so I'm making sure that this isn't going to happen, because I'm filtering all the dick pics out. I'm filtering all the, coercive shit, the grooming stuff, right?
Yeah.
But these conversations are still happening irrespective of this parent filtering out this content. Tell me if I'm wrong.
I am so glad that you speak so bluntly, because I think that we have been lulled as a society to speak euphemistically, and it is causing so much damage. Look at how the big tech companies refer to these. They are pedocriminals. And instead of calling them what they are, big tech refers to them as bad actors. No, a bad actor is who you watch in a B-grade movie. That's not what we should be calling this activity, this behavior. These perpetrators, they're pedocriminals. I didn't coin that term, of course, but
I don't even think I like that.
Pardon?
I don't even think I like that term.
Well, bad actors is inadequate. That is not an adequate description of what is going on. And speaking bluntly is the start of actually being able to address some of these harms. So you are exactly right. And we have to stop speaking euphemistically, and we have to be willing to confront the horrors. Because if we don't, that only benefits perpetrators, doesn't it? They benefit from our silence. They benefit from us speaking euphemistically about these things. And what I would love parents to know, and I also want to say thank you for being someone who is who has had has the police background, and being willing to speak in this space, because that's very powerful. I don't have that experience. I'm just, I'm a mom, and I'm an advocate, and I'm an activist, and I'm a campaigner. But it's so good when we have people who have seen the worst of the worst in the back end, describing the harms that are actually going on. But yeah, what I was going to say is, what I'd love parents to know is that the perpetrators, they laugh at the parents who put their children in the public space on an online social media.
Thank you very much.
They laugh, yeah.
Thank you so much. You've given me all the things that I can get off on.
Exactly. And they laugh at the social media companies for allowing it. It is the perfect combination to give them exactly the content that they want for free. And
they can ask for it too, right? They could be like put a fake profile up and be like, oh, can you do this? Can you do that? And I don't think people realize. So they take these images from these subscription, if it's an Instagram profile, they pay for a subscription, they ask for the specific content that they want, they take those images, they make them into deep fakes, and they turn them into child sexual abuse material. Now, Helen Snyder from the ACE, and she was again on the Four Corners episode, but again, nothing that I'm not unfamiliar with. So whenever there's a CSAM seizure, so CSAM is child sexual abuse material, and that could be anything basically that exploits a child sexually, which also includes text. So if offenders are talking about one of these child influencers, it's those conversations between the perpetrators. So, what they want to do to them, how they want to do it. That is also CSAM. And so that material and, images of these young girls are often found in the same seizures. So when law enforcement goes in and enacts a search warrant, when they're seizing these devices from perpetrators, they're finding these young children in the midst of sets of child sexual abuse material or abusive content that's on their databases. So we know that people who are in these forums, who are having these conversations, who are following these kids online, are sexual offenders.
Yeah,
they are sexual offenders.
Yes,
they're not just maps. So I fucking hate that term, sorry. But minor attracted persons, come the fuck on, sorry, but it's just not okay to me. Like, I've somebody who's experienced this, I know, you know, and as soon as they have that material, that makes them an offender. They're a sex offender.
Yeah.
So you have sex offenders stalking these children. And there was that example then on, and it's a US example, but I have no doubt this is happening in Australia as well. We always think, oh, it's only going to happen in America. It's not going to happen in Australia. If you are of that belief that it's never going to happen to your child, come to me and I'll just slap it into you, because it is happening here in Australia. You know, there was like over 30,000 reports in the ACE in like 2018 or something like that, like of sexual abuse material.
Sure.
So it's,
we have one of the highest offenders, don't we? Per capita.
Absolutely. Yeah, and we have a massive child sex tourism industry in Australia as well. So that just means that if perpetrators aren't perpetrating abuse on our shores, they'll go to somewhere where they can get away with it more readily, somewhere like the Philippines, or, you know, it's a lot of our Asian countries,
Correct.
where we can access that material and access children a lot more readily.
Yeah, but I bet while they're home, they're on Instagram scrolling and looking at not your children, but all of our children.
100%. Well, they're making their own material, because that's the other thing with AI now. They can take these images, these sexualized images of these young, you know, boys and girls, and make their own material now. So
for sure. Yeah.
Where the hell do we draw the line, Lynn?
Pardon?
Where the hell do we draw the line?
Yeah, it's where do we draw the line?
Sorry, is that a loaded question?
It's a big question, isn't it? We draw the line. My line is we simply do not allow the presentation of a child for men's sexual use. We have to acknowledge this is highly gendered. Most perpetrators are men. In my experience, just looking at the child modeling industry, that seems heavily weighted to impact girls. And in that way, it's normalized for girls to become sex objects, isn't it? And yet, our line is resisting that idea that a child is never, ever to be presented as a sexual object for men.
Do you think that parents who are doing this, like, I'm just thinking about, like, if it was my kid, I'd die, like, they wouldn't be caught dead in a, like, little bikini, like, sitting in a sexually posed position online, because I'm aware, right? I know what's going on. But do you think that these parents are just like, oh, they're innocent, like, they're not, like, they're putting them on there knowing that sex offenders are actually doing this, like, knowingly exploiting their child?
I said before that I think that we're at a stage where parents cannot be in denial. I think that it would be very rare to not understand what is going on. I don't think we can claim that we don't know. If that is the case, I think within 30 seconds you would know. I think that is how quickly, if you were to post a photo of your 4-year-old in a bikini on Instagram, I think within 30 seconds, you would know that that's not a safe, wise idea. Sadly, by then it's too late. That image has been screen grabbed and shared across the world, never to be removed, never to be erased, which brings up the whole subject of child privacy and the importance of acknowledging that a child cannot consent to this activity and that they have an inherent right to privacy that must be protected. So, yeah, I mean, there's some more lines that we can sit on.
Well, how can a child actually contextualize the potential future harms of the material being put online in that way?
They absolutely cannot. There is no way that they can. As I said, most of the children that I follow are preteens, and I can guarantee you that while the parents who post the content might say, Oh, she loves it. She's having so much fun. This is the career she wants down the track. She wants to be famous. She's a really good dancer. She just loves this so much. She enjoys it so much. It's fun for her. I guarantee you that they are not also sitting those girls down and saying, by the way, you have 20,000 men all across the world who are downloading your content. They gather together in online spaces to discuss how they want to abuse you. I've just deleted 60 dick pics that they've sent to our inbox, but don't worry, you don't have to see that. Over on X, formerly Twitter, there's a few men over there who are actually videoing themselves masturbating and ejaculating on your picture. But do you still want to do it, honey? No, those conversations are not happening. They're not happening. And those children, they wouldn't even understand if those would be highly inappropriate conversations to be had. And these are activities that every reasonable adult should be protecting children from. We wouldn't have those conversations. If we are aware that those things are happening, we do everything we can to shield children from that. But for some reason, we have made allowances in the online space to say that a child can be, it's like collateral damage. This is okay because over here there are some benefits. Down the track, she's going to be able to pay for her university, or she's going to be able to travel for these dance competitions. And so it's like it's like people are putting things on a scale to weigh up the benefits versus the negatives. And
or justify their shit decision making.
Well, sorry. Yeah, that's exactly what's going on. And there absolutely is zero justification for this. None. Like you said, we could all be making millions from this, couldn't we? Huh.
Well,
want to make a few.
I don't know who'd be looking at me at address, Lynn, but you know, that could be really interesting. I don't even have a handbag.
I'm not saying me, but you know, we could put my child in a bikini and sell some photos around the world, pay for college down the road. No, there's no justification.
Do you know what's really interesting is this has just popped into my head, and I could be completely wrong, but I'm just going to say it. Grooming. So groomers justify. So justification is actually a way to downplay grooming behavior. Yeah. And this is something that perpetrators, my uncle particularly did this, and he would just, like, I would say something about what's going on that I wasn't comfortable with what he was doing to me, or I don't think you're meant to kiss me like this, Uncle Bob. I'm pretty sure that, you know, uncles and nieces don't do this. And he would say, well, don't you think that people do this because they love each other, right? So they would have, there's a justification for the behavior. And it's the same thing you just said. And I find it really interesting. So what these parents are doing is actually grooming their children into sexploitation.
That is, you have articulated that perfectly. I love that. Thank you for saying that.
But it's true, because what's happening is they're actually making excuses, right? So they know that they're putting their child online. They know that their child is going to be exploited. They know that their child is going to be sitting there in some fucking perpetrator's collection while they have a good masturbate over these images, or make some sort of artificial intelligence child sexual abuse material, or they're going to stalk. Now, there was a case in these states where a perpetrator attended a house and was shot by the homeowner because they were stalking the child. It does fucking happen, you know, but parents willingly putting their child in this position and then making excuses as to why they're doing it is grooming. And they're actually grooming. It's actually committing an offense. Like, I wonder that, Melinda, you can hear me? Right? I'm waiting for the comments. But grooming behavior, when a parent is justifying their behavior for putting their child knowingly online where they're going to be sexploited, that's grooming. I'm sorry, but that's the behavior of a groomer.
Absolutely. That's really well said. We've also pointed out, so we've seen perpetrators discuss the girls and their behavior towards the girls in these terms, that they're helping them, they're providing for their future. And if that's
Helping
the
them
case,
get a mental
then
health disorder.
yeah, they see themselves as
Right.
they see themselves as altruists. They're putting out for these girls. It's them who's putting out and giving up something for these girls. And it's such a twisted presentation of what is actually exploitation. And yeah, it all has to be corrected.
You're totally describing grooming.
Mm-hmm.
100%, because they're like, oh, if you do this for me, I'm going to give you this, or
Yeah.
like, I've made
Yeah.
all these sacrifices for you, now you should do this for me. It's what groomers do. It's actually, like, I feel like I'm having light bulb moments, like I'm actually really smart healing. Like,
You are very
like,
smart, Kelly.
no, also it's the glasses, okay, but I feel like I feel like if we don't draw these parallels, people don't understand what their behavior is doing. And I think that's the ignorance that maybe these parents have, is they're not understanding that what they're actually doing is grooming their child into sexual offending. And you said it before, actually, and I don't think I can't forget this. We're going to do it right now before it falls out of my brain hole. You were talking about setting these girls up for sex exploitation later, so that they feel more objectified as women, and moving into adulthood, they basically feel like that they're happy for men to abuse them, they're happy for men to talk to them like shit, they're happy to, well, not happy, but like they feel like they have to be a certain way. So I'd love you to talk more about the long-term impacts of potentially what this is.
Yes.
I feel like very sassy tonight. I'm so sorry. I'm like really sassy. This is like new. What's going on?
It's called for, Kelly. It's called for. And I think that if we're not passionate in this field of advocacy and resistance, well, what are you going to be passionate about? This is something to be passionate about. So I love it. I admire it. And
right?
More of it. Yeah, yeah. Sadly, there is going to be a demand, and I see it. I see it on Instagram. Can't wait till she turns 18 and opens her OnlyFans. And I don't know what hope we can have for a young woman who, since the age of 5, 4, toddlers, I see toddlers presented in this space. And there is a demand from perpetrators for content featuring toddlers. But when she has grown up with this as the norm, where she is just an object to produce content, to put it into the online space, that is essentially a pathway of grooming into future, like you said, objectification and even pornography. And that concerns me. And we need to be working hard to make sure that girls have other pathways, that they have opportunities for education and careers and futures that don't involve selling their bodies online. And the media has a lot to answer for presenting this as a lucrative career pathway for women. So absolutely, they are being groomed for a future in pornography, which is deeply concerning. A couple of girls that I know started as underage swimwear models are now doing OnlyFans or Playboy, which is also a subscription-based platform now as well. So that's deeply concerning. My concern also is for girls who are just entering, and boys as well, but entering the workplace as young teenagers, as vulnerable teenagers. And when they have grown up on social media, having been the recipient of men exposing their genitals at them, what happens when they walk into the workplace and they're in a quiet setting, and a peer or a colleague or a customer or their boss approaches them and drops their pants? Well, they've seen it 10,000 times before from the time they were 10 on Instagram. Are they going to react? Are they going to know that's wrong? Are they going to feel empowered to speak up? Do they understand that that's sexual harassment of the worst kind? Do they know their right? Or are they just groomed to accept a life of abuse and harassment and assault and worse? So yes, and then all the mental health challenges that come with self-objectification as well. We're deeply concerned about that. We want better for our girls and young women. We want them to be celebrated for their talents and their and everything else.
Yeah. Well, it's like they're losing that autonomy. I mean, they're having somebody put this content online on their behalf, and they don't get a say in that, really. By the sound of it, it's that they're losing their control and the ability to say, I'm okay with this, I'm not okay with this is just the way that it is. So I can see how this is going to have massive impacts later on, when their rights to say no, or faced with situations like what you're talking about, and they're not going to feel like they're empowered to talk about that, or to report it even, or say that
Yeah, absolutely. And also there's the issue of the digital footprint, of course, where the content that has been posted from their childhood never disappears. And really, really sadly, and I can't tell you how much this breaks my heart, but there are girls who their names are synonymous with red flags for child exploitation. They're literal names. And how do you ever escape that? That's devastating. And I am determined that more girls will not be subjected to this future where their names are synonymous with sexual exploitation and predatory activity. That's not the future that we want for our women.
Yeah, I hear you and I see you, and I thank you so much for your advocacy in this space, because we need bold voices standing up and talking about like what is actually going on out there. And I feel like and look, I haven't really shared this actually on social media or anywhere ever, but there's people in my family still that won't read my book, because honestly, not my immediate family, but people I know or have known in my circle.
Yeah.
And it's because they say they don't want to know me like that, right? They don't want to know me as a survivor, like as the person who was abused. And that's an experience thing, right? It's hard, but it's one of those things. It's like, I'm more than this, right? I am more than the abuse that happened to me. I am not this fucking shame. I didn't choose this. I didn't choose to be sexually abused. I did not choose to be a victim, right? And people around us make so much difference in our life. People who bolster us and support us and love us unconditionally. And we say unconditionally, it's not with a little like justification of why I'm going to put you online. It's a like, I'm going to protect you. I'm going to keep you safe. And so we have the opportunity to then be like, I am not my abuse. I'm not my exploitation. I'm not my image or what was taken of me. I am Kelly, and I am an athlete, and I am a speaker and a podcast, and I am all these things. I have a family. I am more than what fucking happened to me, and I do not own that shame. And if you are out there and you're listening and you're a victim survivor, I want to say, we see you, we love you, and you are more than what has happened to you. You do not need to own that shame. So I'm just going to say that.
So good. Love it. Amazing. You're going to make me again.
Do it. I love it. All right. So, okay, everybody, deep breath.
Yeah.
All over this, like fat kids on Smarties. Let's go. I shouldn't say that. It's probably really inappropriate. So
I actually didn't hear what you said, but
good. So just, I want to know, what is it, and I was meant to ask you this first, but what is it that drives you with it? Obviously, you're really passionate, but why you? Why this? Why now?
I, you know, I think that I came across Collective Shout at a really perfect time. My kids went to school. They were all at school. And so I had more time available so I offered my services to volunteer with them. But I could see just in my own little world, just this increasing, growing problem of porn culture just all around me. You know, I couldn't step into the shopping center without being confronted with graphic, explicit, porn-themed advertising. And here I am with my small children, trying to protect them, knowing this is wrong, but not really knowing what to do with that. And so I found Collective Shout. And what drives me is that we have an incredible supporter base made up of a very broad, diverse group of people, tens of thousands of people situated across the globe who are united in this very specific task of resisting objectification of women and sexualization of children. And that really fuels me. I love that. I love being part of something bigger because I know that my voice alone is very small and not very powerful. But when people unite, we can accomplish incredible things. And also, I am so privileged to be part of such an incredible team. And you've met them, and I think you'll agree that, wow, you know, what a group of women. I couldn't be more privileged, the women I work with. And there's so much solidarity. You pointed out in a conversation recently that it can be very lonely working in this space, and you're in your own head with the worst of the worst thoughts, confronted with the worst of worst human behavior and imagery, and it can be a living hell in here. But when you have solidarity and are backed by an incredible team, that really fuels me and keeps me going.
Yeah, and I know the conversation talking. Obviously, I had a phone call with these amazing ladies just a few weeks ago now, and the connection and, you know, bolstering each other, it's just so important, and it's made me really committed to build my team. And I've got some amazing women who have come alongside to volunteer their time. And in time, I will share those lovely ladies with you. They'll be on my website. But you really can't. I've often struggled to do this work because, you know, I've always done it on top of a full-time job, and
Yeah.
you know, it's always just so hard because you never know where it's going to land. You never know if anyone's listening, or, you know, every time you show up online, or every time you talk about it, or whatever it is, it takes this huge amount of effort with that vulnerability. I was every time I talk, I'm like 3 days later, I get this big headache and I feel like shit. And I'm like, oh, there's my vulnerability hangover.
Yeah.
You know? Because it's hard, and we do need each other, and it's so important. And that's why I wanted to do this podcast too, to change kind of the stigma a little bit, but to bring people who are like-minded to share and to help improve outcomes for survivors and those working in the space. It's not just for survivors, it's for all of us doing this work, because we need each other 100%. Like, it is heartbreaking work, but there's wins as well, and there's wins when you know that good work is done, and, you know, cycles are broken, and survivors speak up and are heard and finally seen after so long, and have the outcomes that they've, you know, always hoped for. And it's not easy, but it's so much easier when you get to choose who rides in your carriage with you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's so good. The wins are invigorating. Absolutely, they keep me going as well. And I have to be able to put my head on my pillow at night, and I know that I can do that. If I were to turn a blind eye to this stuff, or to crawl in a hole because it all seems so hard and too big and can never be fixed, I don't think I would sleep well at night. That doesn't sit well with my conscience. I feel like I have to be active in this space. And yeah, the more the better. the more connections, the more opportunities to speak out about this, the more ability to empower other people to speak out against things when they see it, the better. The better the outcome's going to be for survivors. Yeah.
Yeah. What would you like to, I guess, communicate? Because the thing is, I'm like, what's the solution for this kidfluencer issue? There's a culture of kidfluencing. What message would you like to, one, convey to parents, and two, what needs to be done? So they're the two things, and then we'll answer some questions from our audience.
Yeah. Well, I think we're at this stage where we need regulation around this. You know, these are working children, essentially, and it seems like our labor laws should cover these things. I was reading through some I'm in WA, and I was reading through our state legislation around child labor laws, and there are some really good aspects to it, and it seems like it should protect against some of the activity that we see. So, for instance, I would have to dig it up and read verbatim to get it right, but it does protect against the sexualization of children and the use of children in any sort of exploitative or pornographic setting, of course, or production, or even creation of advertisement. But I'm seeing this on a daily basis. I'm seeing girls sexualized in the process of advertising brands, essentially. So it seems like there is a framework there, and I presume there is a will there, but maybe some loopholes need to be closed around regulating child labor, and I imagine that could help. We have seen changes to our online safety laws, which are intended to improve child safety. Yeah, so I believe that the eSafety Commissioner is pursuing greater powers in that area to ensure child safety online. But you know, when we're speaking about law and regulation, it really is the bottom of the barrel when it comes to corporate behavior. And I wonder why. Why does it take legislation for a company to do the right thing, for these corporate leaders to make very basic, good choices that would protect children, when they could do it just of their own goodwill? If they prioritize child safety over profit, we would have these measures in place already, and we wouldn't have to go through all of the red tape and the lengthy inquiries and submission processes to get these changes into place. They would be there in the first place. And I've often heard around child safety online, I've heard it likened to a council park. You wouldn't let your kid in the park unsupervised. So we shouldn't allow them online unsupervised. And it's so much more despicable than that. When you acknowledge that there are massive billion-dollar, rich, wealthy, well-resourced, the most tech-savvy companies in the world behind this activity, who could actually do something, and they're profiting. And we wouldn't stand for this from, say, a fast food restaurant down the road. Say they have a playground, and they invite the kids to come play in the playground. And they also invite perpetrators to come and sit. And there's a viewing area into the playground. And the perpetrators can come and they can pay to sit and view these children playing. We would not stand for that. And yet that's essentially what's going on in the online realm. And why don't we hold big tech companies, and let's name the heads. We're very intent about that at Collective Shout, to humanize these companies. They're not morally neutral, ethereal blobs. They are real decision-making men, mostly, behind these companies, who by willful act and omission are facilitating harm and exploitation to children. name them, hold them to account, and they don't need legislation to actually do the right thing. That's the thing. So, yeah. What was your question?
Well, look, you said two really important words: is willful and omission, right? So there's like the intent, they know, and then like omission. To me, I heard that as like they're doing this on purpose and they're withholding certain information in order to just allow this to continue and proliferate on their platforms. And we know that this is happening, and I don't know that there's an easy solution, but that there are things that can be done to mitigate these effects. I really believe that.
So
and
let's
parents stepping up, like surely there's got to be something with this grooming thing, right? Like, am I onto something here? Like,
I really think that is a fantastic way to frame it and educate parents, because I think that just saying to a parent, if you do this, you're complicit, I think they kind of shut down. They don't want to hear it. They're benefiting financially, and so they just don't even want to engage. They get very defensive, and anyone who saw the Four Corners episode might have sensed the defensiveness in some of the parents.
All the naivety. They're like, oh no, I'm doing this. It's so good for them. Oh,
yes.
I love it.
Yeah.
Right, that sounds really bad.
No, I think that the general reaction to those parents, I was reading through the commentary on some posts around that, and the general reaction was, how can they do this? So I think framing it as a form of grooming could be really, really helpful. Absolutely. I think we've become very lazy when it comes to ethical decision making, and we frame everything as an immediate personal benefit without being willing to confront potential of wider, longer term risks. And so I think we need to sharpen up our thinking skills, to think about what are the broader implications for my child for this. We can't stop at profit. We can't stop at money. I'm going to get some money now for this, therefore it's good. That cannot be the limitations of our ethical decision making. We have to go beyond that.
Yeah, and it's something too. There's has to be some realization of the dangers of, like, you put it really well in saying, like, because I was kind of chuckling, going, yeah, that's so dumb. Like, let's just set up the park so that all the pedophiles can come there and watch your kid, and oh, get this one an ice cream. Here, why don't you give this one a picture of your doodle? I mean, like, come on, you're not gonna do that. But like, essentially, and one of our listeners is asking the question. Don't they worry about when an offender will decide to traverse the lines of commenting and offending online and seek out an opportunity to offend against that child? Would you, as a parent, take your child and be like, here you go, here's my kid, right? I mean, this happens at times. It's called trafficking. It's called child sexual abuse, and it does happen, right? But on the online space, you're essentially doing the same thing. You're actually trafficking your child, almost, to a perpetrator, and saying, here you go, like, have at it, have at my child, and let's just hope there's no mental health implications later on, because there really isn't. One of the things, I've got two things in my brain. One of the things is these kids vlogging, right? And vlogging is they just talk about their life, like they jump online in their message groups and their chats, and they talk about everything they do, everywhere they go, what school they go to, who their friends are. It would take less than 30 seconds for me to get onto one of these kids' profiles and find out where they go to school, who their friends are, where they even live. It wouldn't be that hard for me to go to their house and actually just to see them. How hard is it for a perpetrator who knows what they're doing, who's cunning, who's able to manipulate? Like, it's doable, right? It happens, and it happens more frequently than I think we would like. I don't have any numbers, people. Come on, I don't. But it's not that hard. Like, it is within seconds. A child can be groomed online. The ACE talks about it all the time. It can happen in minutes. It can happen in days. That's why sextortion is so prolific. All right. So we're setting up these kids, we're handing them off to these perpetrators like they're lollies, like a commodity.
Literally. Yep. Serving them up on a platter. And
Yeah.
Instagram's algorithm caters to this.
Yeah.
I think that's why Instagram has been such a focus of our campaigning, because they just, every new tool they come out with, it's like, this just makes it so easy for any perpetrator who wants to find a child, who wants to connect and engage with more children. Makes it so easy for them. Yeah.
And one of our listeners makes the point about re-victimization. I think that's really important actually to know, because what happens, and you kind of mentioned this earlier, is what happens later in life when they're faced with these situations. But actually this grooming behavior, without putting strategies in place, when parents do this, they're actually inhibiting the child's ability to respond powerfully. So like if I know, so what happens, like, and this has happened in my childhood, right? Is I knew something was wrong, right? I knew, I could feel it. I was afraid. My heart was racing, and I'd say, oh, part of the grooming process is to isolate you from your family and the safe people that you know you can talk to. So the only one that you feel like you can talk to is the perpetrator, right? So you ask, you're like, oh, you know, I feel like this. Is this something wrong? I don't think this should happen. And then they'll justify their actions, right? So that's actually, again, inhibiting those responses. And so that's what's actually happening here. We're setting these kids up so that they have inhibited responses. So they're not actually trusting their autonomy and their body signals to tell them that something's not okay. We're putting them in a position where we're forcing them to have to choose, and choose in a way that's actually going to have massive negative impacts or cause them re-traumatization, because they're putting themselves into vulnerable positions that any other child who hadn't had those experiences would be able to say, this is not a safe situation. This is not okay. I'm not okay.
Yeah.
I'm scared.
Really, really important. Yeah. Yeah. You're highlighting that even these child models that I follow, they would be taught to ignore really serious red flags, which in a normal setting, children are trained to respond to and report. And they're being shaped to ignore them and to tolerate them and to shut them down and to think that, no, there's nothing wrong. That's frightening.
Yeah, now that you say it like that, I hear it back. I'm just yelling at myself. I'm like, oh, yeah, it makes sense, because I'm thinking, you know, like I get a bit special sometimes, and like I'm like, I should be doing these lives, and I should be talking about this, and I should be talking about that. It takes, and I'm just going to say this, not that I'm floating my own boat, but it's a lot of fucking effort to get on here and do a live. Like I choose to do live shows like this because it means I can talk to our audience. I can put a face that they trust, and I'm not just some like avatar online or a person that they don't know. They can see that I'm real, right? And so I like to build that trust. But
Really
I
good.
get emotional sometimes, right? And I just can't. I don't have the emotional capacity to do a live or to go online. I want to, and I will get back there. But that's me listening to my self-care, listening to me going, you know what, I'm not okay with that. Whereas if I was pushed to do this all the time, and I was like, no, you got to get up, you got to do this every day, every whatever, I'd be a fucking mess. And I can just imagine that these kids are being put into these really vulnerable positions where they're tired, or, you know, they don't want to do it today, but, you know, maybe it's making money, and so you have to. So you're putting these kids into these awful situations where they have to perform and they have to act, they have to ignore their body signals, they have to ignore, you know, feeling unsafe and scared. Like they're just, I don't like it, Lynn.
No.
It's making me really angry.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I spend 20, well, let's say I spend 9 out of 10 waking hours angry. That's just the reality of this space, isn't
Chocolate.
it? Yeah.
But it's quite therapeutic.
Yeah, definitely. I was thinking how just child modeling and dancing and gymnastics, and where I see the bulk of these this victimization happening just in the mainstream. It just packages it up so nicely for the girls, though, doesn't it? Because it's something they love doing and it's appealing to them, and they see it as something good. And there's something almost more sinister about that. Yeah.
I have to think though, like if it wasn't for social media, we probably wouldn't have the same level of problem. Because look, I want to say the hopeful part of this is at least we're having this conversation, right? Like,
yeah,
you know, and I know that, you know, our e-safety commissioner, and I'm really shit because I didn't go and read it. I was like, oh, I'm going to do this, but I ran out of time. But there's new regulations and there's new codes and industry codes, and I know Julie, and I know she's working tirelessly, and her office is working tirelessly to interrupt and to counter these crimes and this culture of online offending. Mm-hmm. I know that they're working their butts off to protect our kids. So I have every reason to hope, as much as I feel horror at times as to what these kids are facing and what these kids are being set up for. So, you know, I think we have to look at both sides of it, because otherwise it'd be a very horrible conversation all the time if there was no hope. But I do think that it requires us being really brave for our kids and actually shutting up and being like, okay, I need to learn about this and I need to contextualize this, not just, you know, the 4-second goldfish kind of flick past, oh yeah, that's great. Like, really invest time in understanding why this is a problem and why you need to be aware of it. I think we just don't bother because it's just too overwhelming, perhaps, or I don't know why we don't learn more about this. I don't.
It should be a priority when we think about children as our greatest asset, our greatest resource. They are the future of the world. We should all be educated in this space, and we should all be activists. We need everyone speaking up on this.
Yeah, we do. We've run out of time, Lynn, but we probably have plenty more to talk about. Maybe we should have like all the whole team on, and we can like go to town on like all the crazy issues.
Well, that would be wild.
Guys, if you would like to get hold of Lynn, her LinkedIn QR code is on the screen now. Please feel free to get in touch. She's with Collective Shout. Lynn, thank you for spending time with us tonight. Sorry for being so ragey, but I appreciate that you can be ragey with me.
Thank you for everything, Kelly. Thank you for all you're doing. Thank you for this podcast.
Thank you, guys. So, guys, if you have been listening tonight, thank you so much for being part of the audience. If you've been triggered or you're not feeling okay, please head to my website, kellyhumphreys.com. There's some numbers there, or reach out. And Reclaim Your Freedom. Guys, if you don't have a copy of that, it's a free ebook there, 8 cycle-breaking strategies for survivors. I have it on fairly good authority that it sounds okay, and there's some pretty funny cop moments in there that you might enjoy. But please grab yourself a copy of that, and we will see you in a fortnight's time. Then we're going to take a break, guys. I've got ridiculous amount of presentations coming up, and I'm very excited for those. If you don't have my newsletter, please jump onto my website and subscribe, because you'll hear all about it. And Steve Ball, lived experience. He's a Waka Waka man who has a lived experience of CSAM victimization. He's going to be our next guest. So I'm so looking forward to chatting with him. He's amazing. See you guys soon. Love you guys. Thank you. And that's it. We're out. Thanks, Lynn.